First, though, our top story this half hour, Vice President Mike Pence visiting the demilitarized zone amid his trip to South Korea. During his visit to the region, the Vice President delivered a strong message to the regime in the north.
For more than 2 decades, the United States and our allies have worked to peacefully dismantle North Korea's nuclear program and alleviate the suffering of their people. But at every step of the way, North Korea answered our overtures with willful deception, broken promises, and nuclear and missile tests. The era of strategic patience is over.
Joining us right now is Senior Fellow at the London Center for Policy Research, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Colonel, great to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Thanks so much for joining us. Your reaction to the Vice President's visit and the provocations coming from North Korea now.
Well, I would call it strategic neglect over the past 20 years. And look, I've been working this issue since 1992, and my friend Jim Woolsey, former director of CIA, and I have been working this as something that has been neglected by both sides. And let's be clear on this. We've seen the North Koreans develop capabilities which we consider dangerous to our allies and to the world for the past 20 years, and we've done virtually nothing. And so what we see here now is a complete and clear change of policy saying that your provocations, your development of intercontinental capabilities and nuclear weapons is not acceptable. And Maria, we have to remember the other thing that's going on here is that the Obama White House helped add to this issue by both the neglect of the North Korean issue, but also of funding the Iranians. We know behind the scenes the Iranian payoff we gave them last year has gone to help fund the North Korean program. Why develop your own nuclear technology if you can outsource it to the North Koreans?
Wow.
Which is what's been done here. So we have to understand this is a huge problem that finally someone's going to deal with.
The President told me last week that the U.S. sent an armada, that's what he called it, that we have incredibly powerful submarines just sitting there right close to the Korean Peninsula. Is that enough to put the fear into the leader of North Korea to stop with all of these missile tests?
Well, we have exercises going on. We've been very clear in announcing, without giving away capability, that the intent to use something to diminish his ability to threaten our allies around him. And by the way, this is another reason, Maria, you saw Secretary of Defense Mattis, his first trip was to the Pacific to help reassure our allies. We have to go both ways with this. We have to understand that we have to reassure our allies. We don't want them to go nuclear. The Japanese are much closer to having a nuclear weapon than people care to recognize. We don't want that to happen. We want to maintain an assurance. And also, Maria, we have to make the North Koreans understand that there will be consequences for bad behavior. And this is something new to them.
Colonel Shaffer, is Kevin Kelly here. We've seen the time for negotiations and diplomacy is dead. I mean, we've seen it through the Clinton administration, the Bush administration. We can't keep giving money to North Korea because guess what they're doing? They're doubling their infrastructure for centrifuges, and they're just not listening. I mean, you have a dictator that assassinated his older brother, and one of the assassins was wearing an LOL shirt. So I don't understand why we can even continue what we've done in the past. So what is the path forward? If we can't do sanctions because they haven't been working, if we can't do giving them money because they're not giving it to their people to feed, they're doing it to double their infrastructure, what can we do? Is it just solely working with the Chinese to actually get something done and relying on cyber warfare? Because what else is there?
Well, there are more severe capabilities. I've been on teams which have looked at options in this area. I can't go into them for obvious reasons, but we do have other options. But it's a political will to use them. That's the issue. It's like we've had these things for 15, 20 years. The issue is political will. Will a leader like a president authorize us to do it? We have to work with the Chinese, no doubt. The Chinese literally can turn the lights out in Pyongyang and North Korea. So this is something that we have to actually work with the Chinese on. It's not in the Chinese interest to see the North Koreans behave badly to the point of where they provoke a war. So I think they understand that.
Well, this weekend, Sebastian Gorka joined me on Sunday Morning Futures, and we talked about the North launching yet another missile. Of course, it was not a success, exploding shortly after launch. There are several reports that the U.S. may have hacked this missile. What do you know about this? Sebastian Gorka is the deputy assistant to President Trump. Here's what he said when I asked him the question.
This is not the Obama White House. We don't give our playbook away. That is very bad strategy. But we have an incredible team, whether it's Secretary Mattis, whether it's H.R. McMaster, whether it's Tom Bossett that is responsible for some of our most amazing cyber work. But we're just not going to tell people what we do. So people need to draw their conclusions, but understand the use of the Moab, the use of the cruise missiles, these things send a clear message.
What do you think, Colonel? Did the U.S. go on offense to try to take that missile down?
Well, I can't go into a lot of the details that I know of our capability, but I think that I would guess probably yeah.
Probably yes, yeah.
And the Moab comment was something completely clear. Said was clear on this. That dropping of the bomb in Afghanistan against an ISIS site using what we call a penetrator was more about sending a signal to the North Koreans than the Afghans. Look, it killed a lot of ISIS folks, that's great, but I know the people who designed it. I've worked with the people who designed that weapon. That weapon is for taking out bunkers that hide nuclear weapons. So this is where the signaling by the Trump administration is being crystal clear. The North Koreans must be taking notice because, again, it's very clear these capabilities are now back on the table.
That's incredible. I mean, to send these messages, how come we haven't sent this message before? I mean, that mother of all bombs was... It was there on the table for use, and right. We've never used it.
No, a close friend of mine is the CEO of the company that developed it. No, we've had it on the shelves for literally a decade. So this has been, again, as I said, Maria, a political choice. The political will was not there to use the full spectrum of capabilities we have available to us. And by that neglect, we've seen the North Koreans develop all these hideous and very severe capabilities that we now have to deal with.
Wow. Brian Bremberg, go ahead.
Colonel, do the American people have to get comfortable with a level of military involvement in North Korea that we just haven't seen before? And do you think people are ready to deal with that sort of thing?
Look, the North Korean issue has never been resolved. We are at war with the North Koreans. It's an armistice. That's why we have the demilitarized zone. We have essentially a state of war. This never stopped since 1953. So in many ways, we are simply moving forward with the logical consequences of North Korean bad behavior. And let me be clear on this. We have to now move forward with reinvigorating our own nuclear deterrence. There was an article over the weekend regarding the B-61, a very old nuclear weapon that we're now re-looking at how we use. So we have to understand that we have to show that we are, as Reagan said, the most mighty military on the planet, not wanting to use it, but willing to use it if we're provoked to do it.
Yeah, and that's really what the president said to me last week. Very tough. You know, not giving anything away in terms of what we have, but reiterating the fact that we've got the most technologically advanced and powerful armament. Let me ask you this, Colonel, because the rising tensions around the world are obvious. There are reports now that the U.S. has conducted tests involving a new version of a nuclear bomb. Right. Scientists at Sandia National Laboratory say that they've run successful test flights involving the upgraded version of the bomb. Right. Will President Trump become a war president?
Well, I hope not. I think, again, this goes back to Reagan being able to win the Cold War without actually firing a shot. We have to be able to show, Maria, that we're building effective nuclear weapons. And this has been neglected by both sides, both the Bush White House, 43, 41, and the Clintons and Obama. We had on the table a few years ago something called the Reliable Replacement Warhead, a dial-a-nuke, which was essentially thrown away by the Bush 43 White House. That our deterrent, our nuclear deterrent, which is critical to our ability to show strength to keep our allies with us and keep our enemies at bay, has not been updated. I always talk about the fact, you know, how many people do you know that drives a '79 Ford Pinto? Nobody. But that's the level of technology we currently have in our nuclear arsenal. Wow. So it's time we upgrade it. It's time we modernize it. It's time we make it credible again.
Colonel, good to see you. Thanks very much for your insights this morning. Always a pleasure.